to have been born beside noticeable history. London City enabled me, like many others, to harbour a deep appreciation for its historic and powerful presence, not just as a city, but as a world of its own. Across various cities we find ourselves surrounded by buildings of wonder and historical relics which define the very fabric of Western brilliance. So today I mention London and these wonderful cities not to talk about London, or even these cities in general, but the world as we know it. London, like many cities, attempts to hide its history under modern, tacky architecture. Cities implement colourful, unimaginative vandalism in the form of block buildings and eyesores. The enforced cultural liberalism existing all around us uncreates and creates all, from our ghettos to our traffic lights based on gender. But one great power cities like London, Rome, Athens and others have is a grand number of historic relics which one cannot ignore or deny. But does the same protection exist for other locations on Earth where it's far easier to eradicate such items out of sight? This short video is dedicated to a fad which has been happening for a few years and seems to have intentions of growing well into the future, and this is of churches being converted into skate parks and BMX parks. Allow me to first introduce you to Skateparks in Caterham, Surrey, which is a skate park in what's known as the Chapel. Linden Homes takes part in something called the CR3 Youth Project with various other impressive investors named, quote, CR3 Youth Project Limited. This is a group specifically named for this establishment. The site of Skaterham or Skaterham had previously been a former guards' chapel within the grounds of a military compound built for the Foot Guards regiments in 1877. The site was then redeveloped by Linden Homes and turned into a modern housing estate. Another example would be the impressive Malmesbury Abbey, which is a religious house dedicated to St. Peter and St. Paul. This building is one of the few to remain after the dissolution of the monasteries carried out by Henry VIII in his attack on the Catholic Church. This does serve as a place for people to worship in today's time, but also offers skateboarding events known as Abbey Skate. This has been going on under the noses of the public for quite some time. For instance, a few years back in Belfry, Northern Ireland, one was shut down named Skate 56. In an article written by Down News, this statement was made, quote, "The Belfry in Newcastle is closed after the management committee handed back the keys of the property to the priests in the parish who oversee the property." End quote. The article then goes on to list various reasons the establishment should stay open, as opposed to finding new, more suitable sites. Existing in a County Downs town, the Belfry is a 19th century church turned skate park which is now owned by a company called Blue Clarity, who use it as office space. Our next site is a clear example of public vandalism against atheism and society. This is St. Liborius Church, which was once a Catholic domain. Renamed Skate Liborius, situated in North St. Louis, America, which today also serves as a yoga and dance studio. The broad daylight assault on tradition, class, and culture is outlandish and seems free to spread its message across social media without fear of censorship or complaints. Red Bull have had 3 events in the shape of amateur contests, with various other names advertised on their events poster. Notice the floor they're landing on in this church is exactly as it would have been if it was still used for worship. Let's take a trip to Spain and visit the church of Santa Barbara in Lorena, Asturias. This building was originally designed by the Asturian architect Manuel del Busto in 1912, but has since become something very different to its designer's intentions. This once served as a parish to workers at the nearby munitions factory around the time of the Spanish Civil War. Towards the end of the Spanish Civil War, the church was said to have lost a lot of its congregation. In an article from the Spanish Local, Fiona Govan writes the following as to how the change took place. Quote, "A combination of crowdfunding and sponsorship by Red Bull saw the 1912 church building fully repaired and transformed, with the addition of ramps turning it into a public skate park dubbed the Chaos Temple. The name it advertises itself on social media as is La Iglesia Skate, which seems to have much support. Equally as interesting is the type of characters tagging the venue, be them in attendance or wishing to share something. It's difficult to tell if this band, for instance, is at the location but did tag themselves to be at the location, so all I can take from this is they wish to show association either way. But what's so interesting is the symbolism and music genre being used here. Mainstream media in Spain has offered its support and helped to showcase the once old-fashioned building's updated, colourful imagery. To the trained eye, colour schemes and imagery can signify extreme leftism, following a colourful code of conduct similar to that of the colours of LGBT. Artists, architects, councils, media representatives, and many others adopt this colour scheme as a way of watering down individualism in the minds of those who see it everywhere they go. One look at this location, and I suspected the artist to be of the liberal variety, to which I was not shocked when proved right. Oquadro San Miguel seems to stick to a colourful liberal style, as we see here in further images. It doesn't take much to create an image of what this artist is trying to create. Okuda had found himself another church to paint in Morocco, which was equally as colourful on the outside as what he did to the Spanish church on the inside. If you need to get married in between your skate session, head down to Tube Station, a Christian faith-based organisation in Polzeath, Wadebridge, or if you fancy a swift pint in the House of God, Cafe Oliver in Utrecht is just the place for you. So as not to sound unfair, if we was to be practical, a skate park can be made in, on, or under any of the places around the world that do not hold historical or religious relevance to the lands in question. I'm positive if sites were not available nearby, companies which fund many of these regimes would be able to afford plots of land, or councils could allocate them in industrial estates or appeal for plots of land in public parks and so on. Famous skate parks exist under bridges and within the walls of warehouses where no harm comes to the few historical items we are lucky enough to still have to this day. In today's time, one needn't look hard to find all types of elaborate and interesting skate parks or skate spots in locations which do not hold specific significance. Churches are turned into houses regularly, some at great expense to those doing it, just as churches have been turned into breweries and drinking venues. In my opinion, there is no excuse whatsoever to use delicate, historic locations to build modern skate parks, decorated with colourful or dark, sinister graffiti. The stained glass windows seem to look down in horror as if the world beneath them is rotting. Ultimately, only you can decide if you feel what you have seen here is acceptable or unacceptable. All I can ask is that you think for yourself.